Hi, I'm Jenny. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to set up and use the Stylized Floating Islands pack in Unreal Engine, which is now available on Fab. We will go through the required project setting, included map, a basic mini floating islands demo, and the optional Auto Foliage workflow. Let's start. First, please enable virtual texture support in the project settings. This is required for the Runtime Virtual Texture features in this pack to work correctly. Go to Edit, Project Settings, and then search for Virtual Texture. And then enable it. Restart. Second, for Unreal Engine 5.7 or later, please disable Subtract materials. This helps avoid incorrect glowing or shading issues on some stylized foliage materials. So what I do is type Subtract, S-U-B-S-T-R-A-T-E. And then uncheck. OK. Restart. And that is for the required project setting. Now let's move on to the included maps. First, let's look at the demonstration map. This is the main showcase map of the pack. I recommend opening this map first if you want to view the overall environment presentation, biome and setups, underwater visuals, and the general art direction of the pack. If you want to take a closer look, you can check the showcase video link in the description below. Next is the Assets Overview map. This map is useful for browsing the included assets and content categories. You can find the main assets for the 4 biome themes, including cliffs, rocks, trees, foliage, flowers, waterfalls, water effects, spline tools, Niagara assistance, fog cars, and other environment pieces. This map helps you quickly understand what is included in the pack and find the assets you need for your own scene. Finally, let's look at the Auto Foliage Landscape Grass demo map. This map demonstrates the Auto Foliage and Landscape Grass workflow inside the Auto Landscape Material System. This workflow is optional, but useful if you want foliage to be generated automatically through the landscape material. I will show this workflow later in the tutorial. Here, I already prepared a simple base island setup using the cliff and mountain assets included in this pack. The fog, lighting, waterfall set, and background cliff rocks are based on the demo map setup, then adjusted for this mini island scene. I also add Unreal Engine's third-person character as a simple scale reference and to help check the playable layout. This gives us a clean starting point so we can focus on the main setup workflow. Next, I will create a small landscape area for the island. For this demo, I will reduce the number of components from 8 by 8 to 1 by 1 and set the section size to 31 by 31 quads because we only need a small area. Then I will assign a spring landscape material, MI landscape spring region, located in the Auto Landscape landscape material folder. And press create. After that, I will go to pen mode and set up the landscape layers so the material displays correctly. You can create your own layer info assets in your project by clicking the plus icon, but for this tutorial, I will use the included layer info assets. Then I will right-click the material blend layer and choose fill layer. Sometimes you may need to sculpt or pen slightly to refresh the layer display. Next, I will move the landscape into position, then sculpt, smooth, and flatten the shape around the island. I will also use the visibility tool to remove the unwanted edges. I will speed up this part since the sculpting process is just about adjusting the shape. Finally, I will go to Foliage mode, open the Environment Plants Foliage folder. And add the static mesh foliage assets and pen some foliage onto the landscape. Most materials in this pack are already set up to use Runtime Virtual Texture blending. To make the RVT blending work correctly in the new map, first add 2 Runtime Virtual Texture volumes to the scene. Then assign the included Runtime Virtual Texture assets to the volumes. You can find these assets in the RVT folder. Next, make sure the volumes cover your working area. You can use bounce align landscape and set bounce to help align the volumes to your landscape. Then adjust them slightly so they cover the whole landscape area. After that, select the landscape and add the same Runtime Virtual Texture assets to the Draw in Virtual Texture settings. This allows the landscape to write into the Runtime Virtual Texture. Here, I will show that the cliff rock and bark material instance are already set up to use the included RVT assets. Next, I will set up the water system for this mini island scene. First, I will sculpt a small pond area under the waterfall and add the BP water plant underwater to the scene. You can find this blueprint in the Environment Water Plane Underwater folder. The BP water plane underwater includes the water surface, underwater post-process, waterline effect, and cost setup. For this spring mini island scene, I will assign the corresponding spring water material, underwater post-process material, waterline post-process material, and cost material, then adjust a few settings slightly. You can adjust the X and Y size of the water plane. In this pack, I limit the X and Y scale range to 5 to keep the water setup stable. If you need a larger water area, you can duplicate the water plane and place multiple pieces together. Next, I will use the Bridge and Road Spline tools to connect the 2 islands. I have already duplicated the second island and placed it in the scene. First, I will add a bridge spline to the scene. You can find it in the Spline Tool Bridge River Road folder. Then I will move and duplicate the spline points between the islands to build a bridge. You can adjust the spline points to control the path of the bridge. In the detail panel, you can also adjust settings such as the material, mesh, mesh width, mesh height, and collision. Then I will add the rope spline and bridge support and adjust them to match the bridge layout. These spline tools make it easy to connect different floating islands and build a simple playable path. To test the scene, I will add a player start and use the third-person game mode. If you don't already have a third-person setup in your project, you can add it through Unreal Engine's feature or content pack. Here, I will quickly show the player start, the third-person content setup, and the game mode override in Word settings. Now, we can press play and work around the mini island scene. This helps confirm that the island layout, bridge connection, and water setup work correctly in a playable view. This pack also includes an optional Auto Foliage and Landscape Grass workflow. You can find a demo in the Auto Foliage Landscape Grass demo map. This workflow is useful if you want foliage to be generated automatically through the landscape material. The related controls can be found in the Z Auto Foliage Landscape Grass section of the Auto Landscape Material instance. You can also find the landscape grass type assets in the Auto Landscape Auto Foliage folder. These assets define which foliage meshes and generation settings are used for each landscape layer. When you pen the corresponding landscape layer, the assigned foliage can be generated automatically through the landscape grass system. That's the basic workflow for setting up a simple floating island scene with this pack. You can find the Fab Product Page, documentation, and showcase video link below. For questions or support, you can contact me at JennyChouArt@gmail.com. Thank you for watching.